Hello gamers and welcome to the big one. Many a PC gamer has been awaiting the arrival of the latest marker in the gargantuan GTA franchise. All the whispered rumours of a version, then the announcement and following delay, followed by another delay and yet another. Was all this just a precursor to a messy release on the very fractious PC market? Like the fourth entry, would this be labelled a bad port by the community and then modded to the moon and back? Would it even run well on a high-end machine? So many questions that hung in the air, but on April 14th, 2015, these questions and more were answered when Rockstar finally stopped the delays and released it worldwide across PC. Now all we need to do is answer these questions. I'm not going to cover the upgrades and improvements from the original PS3 or Xbox 360 versions, as I went into large detail with these improvements in my tech analysis and head-to-head of the Xbox One and PS4 versions last year upon release. Link below. Please check it out to learn more. Instead, this is a full-on analysis of what the PC DX11 or other versions offers up to owners and how it performs across a wide spread of PC hardware. I now have 4 machines that I use to cover what I feel is a complete end-to-end range of most setups, and you can make the gaps up in between and a little bit at the end from this. To explain, I now have the following machines. 1. An entry-level PC with an AMD A10 7850K APU sporting 16GB of RAM. Overkill I know, but I can only enable half of for testing later. This is the cheapest level desktop that allows you to have a PC and play games, but just with cutbacks on many areas. But this is a full DX11 GPU, so it can run modern games just like GTA 5 here. This is all sitting on a medium AMD A88XM Plus gaming board with a 1TB SSHD. Total cost, which includes an OS on all machines, but you only need to buy the one per machine, with a £110 APU, £35 PSU, £55 motherboard, £70 hard drive, a £30 case, £20 keyboard and mouse set and £55 for the RAM. This is just for the 8GB of RAM. The full 16GB costs £110. Finally, Windows 7 was £60, but you could use the preview Windows 10 to save this and then see what deal you can get on the OS when it launches. If you have Win 7 or 8, then the upgrade to 10 is free for all during the first 12 months of release. Shopping around and buying lesser parts could save you a few notes, but my advice is don't. Buy the best you can afford and go for name brands like above, like Gigabit, MSI, Corsair, etc. Then you will have a decent machine that will last and not give you issues. The PSU is certainly an area to get a decent brand and minimum bronze rated. Number 2. This is effectively the same machine above, except it now sports the first step into a serious gaming card, Nvidia's GTX 750 Ti. This is a great card, as it not only runs most games very well at 1080, but it only adds around £100 to £110 to the budget. So if you start with the above machine, the biggest benefit of a PC is choice, and the ability to change and upgrade. So this machine from scratch comes in at £550 all in. This is my long-term and medium-range number 3 gaming machine with a 16GB DDR3, Corsair AMD 7870 graphics card with the FX 8350 octa-core CPU at its heart. This card is really an R270 and like that sports 2GB of RAM just like the APU if you've got the RAM and GTX 750 Ti above. But if you are in the market to buy now, I would recommend the R280 or 280X, as this has 3GB of RAM and is more powerful for only £150 to £180 respectively. All in, this machine has a much better board, PSU, case along with these extras, so this comes in at just over £800, but for another £50 it would pack even more of a punch. And finally, the fourth machine is the Big Daddy, representing the high-end gamer that comes with a Gigabyte Z97X board, i5 4690K, 16GB of DDR3 again, GTX 970 3.5GB card. And aside Crossfire or SLI rigs, for a single GPU machine there is only going to be minor frame rate differences between this and a 980 or 290, and they're going to flip-flop between games. If you want to go Titan X, then this is certainly going to push the budget into orbit. Now this machine is not cheap, with the GPU alone costing as much as a PS4, but this is not about cost, this is about choice, and with this machine costing over £1,000, it should serve as the testbed for the games to see how they can be run. So with that out of the way, I just wanted to explain each machine so that whenever you have or intend on buying, this range should allow you to have an idea of roughly where it will fall in performance wise. So let's get started.
I'm hit! D, you gotta get out of here! I'm gonna leave you, Mikey! Open the door!
I have ran this test from the intro section on all with the frame rate for each showing as you play. See, for this analysis I have dropped my new average test, but you will see a run of that in open play at the end to give you an idea. We can see that the GTX 970, now called the high-end machine, and the 8350-7870, the medium range, are locked 60 and near 60, with the enthusiast machine of the A10 plus the GTX 750 not far behind the medium machine. These are all running the same settings, which I will go through shortly, aside the entry machine of the A10 APU with its R7 on-chip GPU. Here I had to run the game at 1360 by 768 and drop everything to low, and you can see that it is consistently bad, with it running at 20 FPS pretty much all the time. But this is a low level machine, and in all fairness does a very good job of running the game around the last gen level. The bonus here is, unlike the non-K Intel CPUs, AMD's can be overclocked, so you could clock both CPU and GPU and a little bump up performance, but at best this may see a 2 to 3 FPS increase. But once we move outside to the firefight, they all drop aside the high machine, which keeps the lock 60. Note here that this machine is also running all settings aside the extra ones at full, so performance here is solid and consistent. The other machines do not fare as well, aside the entry machine, which keeps it constant at 20 with its settings. Now we see the AMD powered medium machine is dropping below or equal with the Enthusiast 750 machine, even though this only sports an AMD 4-core 3.7 GHz CPU against the much faster 8-core CPU at 4.2 GHz. This highlights the much better GPU driver from Nvidia that is easier on the CPU. All machines are running the latest GT5 ready game driver from both independent hardware manufacturers, with the AMD driver being a beta only, but right now they are trading blows at around the same level. And when we get into open action with driving, the advantages of the high-end machine are clear, with it not dropping from its VSync 60 aside a frame when colliding with traffic for a moment. This is all at the maximum settings, the other machines running around the 35 mark with some occasional dips below. But even then the settings are slightly lower on these also, which is a good time to move into that. Rockstar have delivered a full suite of options to tinker with that achieve the best performance for the machine. From the DX version within the menu, you also get to change population density, draw distance and variation of traffic and pedestrians. This eats into GPU RAM along with other options. Now, although you can ignore the warning and set these all to more than the allocated GPU VRAM available, it can cause minor stutters for cards that have less. Not a big issue, but if you do get this, check this first. But it will run over the amount and simply page file from system RAM when needed. With the game being in development for PC first and then most likely ported to Xbox One and PS4 midway, the scalability of the engine is very clear and welcome. With the console sporting the highest level textures, unsurprisingly, this is the safest way to keep within any memory budget, and drop them to high, as you cannot really notice this much within the game unless you are staring at areas, and like the console versions, there are still some lower quality textures even at the highest settings, again not unsurprising in such a vast open world. You can tweak the shadows, particles, post-processing effects, the strength of motion blur, reflection, water, grass, pretty much all you need to find the ideal balance. But the options also allow you to have extra modes that extend the shadow range around you. As I said on my GTA 5 console head-to-head, the limit even on its high setting draws a small space around your character as you draw towards a wall. This can be extended here along with the draw distance further still when flying, but be careful as this can make your frame rate plummet. Controller options, Rockstar editing mode with improved graphic options for captured videos within the game editor all add up to a thorough and comprehensive set of options that show that Rockstar wanted to delay the game to make it right, and they have done just that. Aside the really crappy and slow game launcher and downloader, which is having to install it on 3 separate machines would have been a nightmare, was it not very easy to cross-pollinate them from the one downloaded installation. This issue aside, I have not had any crashes on all 4 setups from many hours on each so far. The only thing that I have noticed is that memory leaks can happen with the system RAM increasing for long runs in games, but an exit and reload solve this. I have not experienced it again yet. I have not had the chance to test the online heist function, but I will catch up on that later as I wanted to get this all done and uploaded.
What about me?
You always was old choosy, motherfucker.
But we did not wait this long to get the same version as the console only, did we? Well, yes and no. It comes as no surprise to learn that the game overall is the same, with no real extra improvements aside the obvious frame rate increase so long as you have the machine to do it. And be sure this needs a decent CPU and GPU to do that, with only my high end achieving that, albeit with no real drama at all. To go through what the console version offers to what is extra on PC, if you have the hardware, and one important one that runs on the top 3 pretty well. Aside the grass on Xbox One running to what looks to be high settings with the PS4 running very high, the difference between the consoles is nothing more. But on PC you have some extra options. Grass can go up to Ultra, which adds self-shadowing AO on it, whilst also seeming to be more interactive with objects. No surprise to see pretty much all the extras come from a CPU bound limit on the consoles. There is a nice touch, but it can eat into the frame rate, with only the high machine able to run these without too much of a hit. Both population density and draw distance on console looks to be somewhere around the halfway to 2/3, with a variation of inhabitants being the same as max. But this highlights the strength of the engine and what Rockstar wanted to achieve, with the game hiding popping well even at lower ends, aside shadows which seem to pop in even at full visibility of the scale. This is a surprise, as I thought that the PC would offer up a zero pop-in option, with the max being very close, but still some log changes can be seen. But it is a welcome if minor improvement. Console shadows fall between high and very high with a softer touch around the edges, with PC able to go higher still with Nvidia's PCSS or AMD CHS shadows, and some other options which are nice if hard to notice or really bother about, for me anyway, changing these. But again, this can tank the frame rate even on the GTX 970 machine. Post effects is at least high on console, but could also be very high, as I could not really see any difference between them, certainly not worth worrying about. Both DOF and motion blur can be turned off like console if needed, with them only being available once you set post effects to high at least. Reflections in the game get their own option, with consoles running these on Ultra in mirrors, which is added to on PC with an MSAA option just for reflections, if you want to admire your virtual self with no risk of aliasing present. Lower than high, then you do get lower resolution, but around this or above it is good enough to not care about. On streets and cars from the dynamic cube maps that seem to use image probes at places, the consoles run their own version between high and very high. Water is again treated to its own option, and like Reflections does not use SSR at all, but the more computationally heavy but near faultless planar reflection mixed with cube maps or full dynamic cube maps. Again, not sure if consoles run high or very high, but aside slightly better, see more detailed cube maps between them, it matters not a jot as they both look great. See the benefit here and the biggest giveaway of any screen space trick like this, with SS reflections when the objects being reflected are not within your field of view. They disappear. See my The Order 1886 analysis for a more detailed description of this. But here with planar reflections mixed with cube maps, this is not an issue. Planar reflection is drawing the reflected area again from another angle, the reflecting source, and it has no concern for being an FOV or not. In GTA 5, they draw the dynamic objects, CNPCs, again using these and blend them with the cube map, creating a convincing and very detailed reflection. With less than high, these are turned off. Aside this, water looks the same. Tessellation and palm are all in play, and comparisons from the displacement tree here with console put the console at what looks to be high, with PC going to very high, which just increases the tessellation factor slightly one more, which can only be seen on other trees as a few minor ridges or anything else using this. As many get confused with this and the other form of tessellation process, adaptive tessellation, which is based on the camera view and position, allowing the objects to be subdivided as it draws nearer to the camera. See Shadow of Mordor for example of this, or here on the trees in GTA. This is a more cost-effective method of using it based on that culling process. Again, this is nice as it adds more depth and organic feel to these worlds and works well throughout. So at this point, there does not seem to be any great changes. And this would be right overall. This is the same version that launched last year with some small extras that are welcome, but not really revolutionary in action. Aside one very welcome addition: cars and shadows. In the console version, only the police helicopter projected a shadow casting light, which looks very nice, but here, even though the shadow quality on console is just above high, from high upwards your car or bike or truck can also cast this same light source. High allows some trees and poles to emit shadows, along with some walls. Very high bumps this up to most objects and NPCs, even railings like the copter can. Shadows are a huge part of making a game looking more believable, and this aside the 60 FPS is the single biggest improvement from the console version. See here as the scene just looks much flatter without them, and coming from one into the other it does stand out. A shame for the console version, but not a deal breaker. Lighting and shadows are a very important part of this reality, and this addition is very pleasing, with all three machines able to run at least high with no real huge extra issue again, a sure sign of the CPU limit on the console. Which branches off nicely into the usage. The game does use multi-core very well, as expected, with 4 cores being extensively used throughout and then a dynamic use of another 2. But this is not consistent, and the 6th core is mostly idle with only small bumps every now and then. Something I am sure that we're working on for the next release as we stride ever onwards into the go wide approach. But it does also flex the GPU when being fed well. Both the 7870 and 750 Ti can run around 90% in parts, with dips below 30 most likely down to the CPU on both than the GPU though. The game is CPU bound aside the entry machine, which is limited by its GPU all day long. And this is of no surprise that the game is a very CPU heavy deferred engine. My high-end machine would most likely be able to swap the GPU with one of the other 2 and get much nearer the 60 target. The game wants fast cores to chug through work, a clear deficit the PS4 and Xbox One have. But this engine was designed around a more serial design, so expect this to be most likely the largest change in the next GTA, aside the adoption of a physically based shading pipeline. Pretty much all the extras in the PC version come from the more powerful, see more power usage CPUs. If you are interested, you can see the settings that replicate the console versions pretty much identically here, having the slider for distance and density at 6 or 7, and all the other settings are shown. As you can see here with my comparison of the one early mission, the high-end machine handles everything with no issue, never dropping from the 60 rate with only one small drop when colliding with a car, with even higher frame rate options available if you have the screen to support them. But the other machines do not fare like this, and even at the slightly lower than this settings that match the consoles, but it does reinforce my point about unlocked frame rates, and with adding in an option to unlock the frame rate like Second Son or Killzone had, along with some other minor changes to shadows and draw distance, staying away from the sometimes vast selection on offer on PC games, this would allow console gamers to make some sacrifices to get the near 60 target, which is always the preferred option, or just play at the low 40s or high 30s, which still manages to be a little smoother. Some of these options have crept into the console version and other games, with the slippery slope of full options not a good thing, but just some basic sliders or toggles, allowing that choice of lock 30 or not to be within the player's grasp. Here on the PC, the choice to tailor the experience to suit those individual desires based on machine is its biggest benefit. In essence, Rockstar have delivered a pleasing, solid and welcome improvement on GTA 5 for its PC audience. So long as you have the hardware, then 60 FPS can be achieved on lesser machines than my high-end one, but you really need a CPU that I'm running here, just lesser of a GPU. But the other 2, even with dropping to the lowest settings, both never achieve 60 FPS in open play at all. But running at the same setting as console at around the same 30 FPS target, with some dips under, but having the very welcome shadows from your car adding in a small but pleasing visual touch. Bearing in mind that from the latest patches on both console versions, they now run a completely locked 30 FPS. The game was delayed, but now it has launched, and if you waited, you can get to play the smoothest version yet. Just be under no illusions that a medium spec or lower machine cannot achieve this. But the game is a superb piece of work from Rockstar, not only in creating such a vast and expansive world to while away days in, but also bring a solid and scalable engine to PC that out of the box performs well across a vast range of hardware. Not a small feat at the best of times, let alone one on this scale.
Now look what you done gone and done. Follow me, let's get through this. Damn, this is gang niggas out here. They got their whole hood with them. The one way out this motherfucker. Hey, get the cover over there by the truck. Follow me, let's get through this. Man, what's a few more of these motherfuckers? Hold up, no way to wait for it now. Close them down, that's it. You deadly motherfucker.
As always, I hope you guys and girls enjoyed this. If you did, then please hit that like and subscribe button. It really helps me immensely. Just be sure when you're out in Los Santos looking for tessellated areas or POM textures, tread carefully, as they can catch you off guard. You guys and girls take care, and I'll see you soon. on the next one.
Let's get him, homie. I want to get paid.
Paid ain't worth shit when you doing 25 with an L. We massacred those motherfuckers. Shit.
Motherfucker's getting away from him.
That's because he's sitting on 140 cubic inches right there, nigga.
Oh, shit, Professor, you're right. Pop that fool. We need him on his ass so we can get what we came for. Shoot that motherfucker. Get that bike back. Shoot him dead.
Man, I'm sorry, fool.
Man, watch that shit, homie. We want your bike, bitch. What's wrong with you? I'll drive next time. This punk get away, we going down, homie. He gonna pin us for all these bodies.
And whose fault is that, Mr. 80s action movie body count motherfucker?
Don't play the blame game. Just get on this shit. Don't get careless, homie. That's the bike we came for.